I never thought it would come to this. My brother Sam was the one person I trusted above all else. We were a team, always had been. Since our childhood, it was always us against the world. I never doubted that loyalty. But that was before I saw what was really happening. I stood in the office doorway, eyes wide, barely able to process what I was seeing. There in front of me was Sam smiling, talking, laughing with our partners. My partners, while behind his back, he was pulling strings that I didn't even know existed. Can you believe this? I muttered, barely above a whisper, not even realizing I was talking to myself. But I wasn't alone. What's wrong, Alex? A voice pulled me back to the moment. It was Liam, a colleague and friend. He was looking at me with concern. I guess the shock on my face was pretty obvious. I didn't know how to respond. How to even begin to explain the mess I had just uncovered. My heart raced and I couldn't breathe right. The contract, the one Sam had promised, was only a formality. It was on my desk, his name scrawled across it in bold letters, pushing me out of the company I built. I should have noticed earlier. The way his smile didn't reach his eyes when he shook my hand last week, the way he'd been distant lately. But I was too blind to see it. No, I said, my voice tight. He's taking everything. Liam's eyebrows furrowed, but I couldn't wait for an explanation. The truth hit me like a freight train. My brother was working behind my back, using me as a stepping stone while I was too naive to see it. I thought we were building something together. We had shared our dreams, our failures, and successes. But this was betrayal at its finest. Sam? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper as I turned to him. He was laughing with another partner, completely oblivious to my presence. I felt a fire burning inside me, a rage I had never known before. I walked up to him. My fists clenched at my sides. Sam, I repeated, louder this time, forcing him to turn around. The smile dropped from his face as soon as he saw me. What's going on? I demanded, stepping closer. My words were coming out harsher than I intended, but I didn't care. This wasn't the time for soft conversations. He opened his mouth to speak, but I didn't give him the chance. You've been lying to me? Stealing from me. My voice was growing stronger with each word, though I couldn't hide the crack in my throat. The betrayal was a weight, pressing down on my chest. He stepped back, avoiding my gaze. Alex, I snapped. Don't you dare act like I'm the fool here. I saw the flicker of guilt flash across his face, but he quickly masked it, retreating into his usual smirk. I'm doing what I had to do. Alex, he said, his tone cold, calculated. You don't understand. I've been carrying you for years. That's when it hit me. All those late nights, those shared visions of success, that was just me doing the work while he took all the credit. All the while, he'd been plotting this. I took a step back, the realization shattering everything I knew about family, about loyalty. You always were the selfish one. I didn't have a choice, he replied, shrugging as if this was just business. You were too naive to see it. Someone had to make the hard decisions. I just got there first. My chest tightened, and for a moment, I couldn't breathe. The betrayal wasn't just in what he'd done, it was in how easily he justified it, as if it were nothing. I couldn't even look at him anymore. I'm done, I said, my voice barely above a whisper, before I turned away. I couldn't stay in the room. I couldn't stay in this life where everything had been a lie. As I left, all I could think about was how wrong I had been. My world, my trust, my brother, it was all gone in an instant. I thought the worst had already hit. I couldn't have been more wrong. It was a week after that confrontation with Sam, and I was still reeling. My head was a mess, a blur of betrayal, anger, and disbelief. But what I didn't know was that the worst part was still coming. Finding out just how deep my brother's treachery ran, it started when I walked into the office one morning. The usual buzz of people talking, working, and moving about was there, but something was off. People avoided my eyes. I noticed it immediately, the shift. They were whispering, not even trying to hide it. Hey Alex, you good? Liam asked, pulling me aside as I passed his desk. Yeah, I'm fine, I muttered. But I wasn't. Something felt wrong, something in the air. Liam looked at me like he wanted to say something more, but I just shook my head. I couldn't deal with that right now. I was barely holding it together. I spent the next hour trying to push through my work, but my mind kept drifting. What if Sam hadn't just taken the company for himself? What if he'd been doing more than that? I couldn't stop thinking about the conversations I'd overheard before the confrontation. Sam talking with investors, pulling strings I hadn't even noticed. That's when it hit me he wasn't just taking credit for what I did. He was systematically destroying everything I'd built. I started asking around. Little things at first, small questions that no one seemed to want to answer. Then I found it. There it was, in black and white emails, messages. All the proof I needed. Sam had been feeding lies to our investors, twisting the narrative so that I was the one looking incompetent, lazy, unfit to lead. He'd poisoned their perception of me, all while smiling in my face. I sat down at my desk, numb. I couldn't even process the weight of it. My brother, my own flesh and blood, had been undermining me for months. All this time I thought he was supporting me, but he had been quietly tearing me apart. I clicked through the emails, reading over everything, how he'd made deals behind my back, sabotaged my efforts, and even spread rumors that I wasn't capable of handling the responsibilities. The sting was unbearable, sharper than anything I'd felt before. It wasn't just about business anymore. It was personal. I leaned back in my chair, my chest tight. The room felt like it was closing in on me. The anger was bubbling up, but it was mixed with a deep sadness. The trust I'd put into Sam, the loyalty, it had all been a lie. My world as I knew it had crumbled. That's when Emma walked in. She was one of the few people left who still seemed to care, who hadn't bought into the lies. She saw me sitting there, my eyes glued to the screen, and her face softened. "Alex," she said softly, sitting down next to me. "I saw the emails. I know what's going on." I didn't look at her. I couldn't. "It's all a lie," I muttered, more to myself than to her. "I worked so hard. All of this was for nothing. You're not alone in this, you know?" She said, her voice gentle. "We'll figure this out. You'll get your name back." But even as she said that, I couldn't bring myself to believe her. Sam had already won. Everyone around me, the investors, the employees, they were already starting to doubt me. His plan was working. They believed the lies. I ran my hands through my hair, frustrated. I don't even know who I am anymore, Emma. My own brother did this to me. The one person I thought I could trust. I don't know if I can trust anyone now. She sighed and placed a hand on my shoulder. "You can trust yourself, Alex. You built this company. You'll rebuild it with or without him." Her words were comforting, but they felt hollow. How could I rebuild something when the foundation had been ripped out from under me? How could I trust myself when the one person I thought would always have my back turned on me so easily? "I don't know where to go from here," I said, my voice barely a whisper. She didn't answer right away, and for a long moment neither of us spoke. I could hear my heart beating in my ears, louder than anything else. Emma finally stood up, her expression firm. "I'm with you, Alex. You don't have to do this alone." But even as she left, I sat there in the silence, feeling more alone than I ever had. The betrayal, the loss, it was all too much, and I didn't know if I'd ever be able to recover from it. Asterisk. I couldn't hold it in anymore. The anger was a storm inside me, tearing at my insides, and I knew it was only a matter of time before it spilled over. Sam had done enough. He'd stolen from me, lied to me, and betrayed everything I had built, everything I believed in. I was shaking as I paced my office, trying to focus, trying to keep my cool, but all I could think about was confronting him. I didn't know what I was going to say, what I was going to do, but I had to face him. I had to look him in the eyes and demand answers. I stormed through the hallway, fists clenched. My heart pounded in my chest, my breath coming faster with each step. The air felt thick, suffocating, as if the world itself was holding its breath. I didn't even knock before I barged into his office. He looked up from his desk, a smug expression playing across his face, like he already knew what was coming. "Alex," he said, his voice casual, but I could hear the hint of annoyance in it. "What's the matter?" I slammed my hands on his desk. "What's the matter?" I repeated, my voice rough. "You've been playing me for months. Behind my back. All the lies, all the scheming. You've been setting me up the entire time." Sam didn't flinch. He didn't even stand up, just leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. "Relax, all right? You're overreacting." Overreacting? The words burst out of me like a dam breaking. "You've been sabotaging everything I've worked for, everything we built together. You've been lying to everyone about me, making me look incompetent, making them doubt me. You think that's just a little misunderstanding?" Sam raised an eyebrow, his gaze cold, calculating. "It's just business, Alex. You were too soft. You didn't see it, but I did what needed to be done." I could feel my vision blurring, the anger clouding my thoughts. I wasn't thinking straight, but I couldn't stop. What needed to be done? Destroying your brother's life? What's wrong with you? I took a step forward, fists trembling at my sides. "I trusted you. I believed in you." Sam let out a short, humorless laugh. "You were always too trusting, too naive. I had to make sure I got what was mine. You were never going to make it on your own, Alex." The words hit me like a slap to the face, and for a second, I couldn't breathe. My chest tightened, my fists balling so tightly my knuckles ached. "You used me," I said, my voice a growl. "All those years, all those late nights, all the work I put in just for you to turn around and take it from me. You really think you can justify this?" He didn't seem sorry. Not at all. Instead, he leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "I don't need your approval, Alex. I did what I had to do. You don't get to play the victim here. You never were the one who was cut out for this." I couldn't breathe. The anger and betrayal were suffocating, crushing me from the inside. I wanted to scream, to punch something, to make him feel what I was feeling. But instead, I just stood there, frozen, my whole body trembling. This was at the breaking point. I couldn't let it consume me. I couldn't let him win. "Is that it then?" I whispered, the rage dimming, replaced with a cold emptiness. "You take everything, and I'm supposed to just accept it?" Sam didn't answer, just stared at me with that same cold expression. That was when I realized something. This wasn't about me anymore. This wasn't about revenge or getting back at him. This was about taking control of my life, about refusing to be the victim. "I'm done," I said, the words coming out in a calm, deadly tone. "I'm done playing your game. You can have this business. You can have everything, but you won't take me down." Sam opened his mouth, probably to say something smug, but I didn't want to hear it. I turned around and walked out of his office without another word. My heart was still pounding, my head still filled with rage, but I knew this was the turning point. I wasn't going to let my brother destroy me. I was going to rebuild everything. On my own, I had nothing left to lose. I wasn't going to stay down anymore. I'd let myself wallow in that anger long enough, but now it was time for something different. Time for action. I wasn't going to be the victim. Not anymore. I had a plan, and it was time to start executing it. It felt like a weight lifted off my shoulders the moment I decided that. I wasn't going to sit back and let Sam destroy everything I'd worked for. I was going to rebuild my life, and I was going to do it on my own terms. I spent the next few days making calls, setting up meetings, pulling strings from places no one knew about, while Sam thought he was untouchable. I was working from the shadows, securing my position, making sure I had everything I needed to come out on top. One afternoon I was walking through the office, heading to my meeting when I overheard a conversation. I heard about the investors pulling out, Liam said, his voice low. "Looks like Sam's got more problems than just you." I paused, heart racing. This was it. The first signs of the cracks in his empire starting to show. I leaned against the wall, trying to hide the satisfaction that was creeping up on me. "Yeah, well, it's his own fault," Emma's voice chimed in. "He thought he could just steamroll over Alex and still keep everything running smoothly." "I guess not." I grinned. I hadn't realized how much I'd underestimated the damage Sam had caused by crossing me. People were starting to see through him. He was no longer the golden child. The walls were closing in on him. Alex, Liam said, turning to me as I stepped into the room. Did you hear? The investors just pulled their support from Sam's latest project. They say he's too risky now. I couldn't help it. I let out a short, humorless laugh. I'd say that's karma catching up with him. Didn't seem to notice the venom in my words. Yeah, but I didn't think it would hit him so hard. It's only a matter of time before his whole empire starts crumbling. I couldn't hold back the satisfaction now. I had no sympathy for Sam. Not anymore. He had made his bed, and now it was time for him to lie in it. Later that day, I went to a meeting with a few key partners, people who I knew Sam had alienated in the past few months. They were waiting for me in the conference room, but I wasn't there to negotiate. I was there to take back control. Alex, one of them, Greg, greeted me. Glad you could make it. We've been hearing a lot about this situation with your brother. I smiled, though it didn't reach my eyes. Yeah, well, that's not my problem anymore. Greg raised an eyebrow. You're moving forward without him? I nodded, my voice steady. I'm not letting him drag me down. I have my own vision for this business, and I'm going to make sure it happens. As we went through the meeting, I could see the shift in their attitudes. The trust they had once placed in Sam was fading, and they were beginning to see the potential in me. The more I talked, the more I could feel the power shifting in my favor. It was happening. Everything I'd worked for was starting to fall into place. I could see Sam's empire beginning to collapse, piece by piece, as he lost the trust of the people around him. By the end of the week, I had secured a few major deals. My position was solidifying, and Sam's was crumbling. I had been prepared for the anger that would rise up in me when I saw his downfall. But what surprised me was how little I felt. It wasn't satisfaction, not exactly. It was more like relief. Relief that I didn't have to deal with his manipulation anymore. Relief that I was taking back what was mine. The next time I saw him, it wasn't in a confrontation. It was at a company event, one of those awkward corporate gatherings where we were supposed to pretend everything was fine. But it wasn't fine. I could see the stress on Sam's face. The way his usual cocky demeanor was starting to crack. He caught my eye across the room. And for a moment, I thought I saw a flicker of something in his gaze. Regret? Fear? I couldn't be sure, but it didn't matter. He had made his choice, and now I was making mine. I walked right past him without a word. The old me would have stopped and confronted him. The new me? I had bigger things to focus on. I hadn't realized it before, but revenge alone wasn't going to fix anything. The anger, the Rajat was consuming me, but what was it all for? I wanted to tear Sam down, to watch him suffer, to show him the consequences of betraying me. But that wasn't enough anymore. I didn't just want to destroy him. I wanted to rebuild my life. I wanted something more than just vengeance. I started to see things differently. Every day I focused on building something stronger, something real. But it wasn't just about business anymore. It was about me, about reclaiming my dignity and my future. Everything I had worked for, everything Sam had tried to take, I was going to take it back and make it my own. The first step was letting go of the anger. It wasn't easy, but I had to. I couldn't let it control me any longer. I had to stop thinking about how to get back at Sam and start thinking about how to move forward. That's when I started meeting people who helped me see the world in a different way. Alex, you're doing great, Emma said one afternoon. We were sitting in a coffee shop, a place I hadn't visited in months. I could feel the weight lifting off my shoulders just being there. The quiet hum of conversation reminding me that I was still a part of the world outside of my fight with Sam. Thanks, I muttered, staring into my coffee cup. I don't know if I can keep doing this. I'm not even sure who I am anymore. She smiled softly, like she understood. You're more than just your brother's shadow. You've got what it takes, Alex. You just need to remember that. I looked up at her, a little surprised. It's hard to remember that when everything around me feels like it's falling apart. I get it, she said, leaning forward. But that's the thing, right? You're not falling apart. You're just building something new, and it takes time. I thought about her words for a moment. She was right. Everything had been about rebuilding. About not just fixing what was broken, but making something better. Something more solid, more lasting. Later that week, I I met with a few people who had heard about my struggles and were willing to offer me advice. One of them, Greg, had been an old mentor of mine. He was the one who had taught me everything I knew about business, but I had distanced myself from him after Sam had taken over. "Alex," Greg said, shaking my hand firmly, "I've been following what's going on. I know it's been rough, but this is your chance. Don't waste it." I looked at him, unsure of what he meant. "My chance for what?" "To redefine yourself," he said, leaning back in his chair. "This is the perfect time for a fresh start. You've got the skills, the knowledge. You just need the right direction." His words hit me harder than I expected. He was right. I'd been stuck in a cycle of anger and revenge. But this was my chance to do more than just get back at Sam. This was my chance to create something for myself. Something real. That evening, I sat in my office, looking over my plans. The ones I'd started months ago, but had never been able to fully commit to. I saw the blueprint for a new business, one that wasn't built on lies or betrayal. One that was built on trust, hard work, and a vision of the future. I smiled to myself for the first time in a long while. I'm not doing this for him anymore. I whispered to the empty room. I'm doing it for me. I was done with revenge. It had its place, but it wasn't the end of my story. I had a future to build, and I was ready to start. I could feel it happening, the inevitable collapse. Sam's empire was starting to crumble. The whispers around the office, the tense meetings with investors, they all pointed to the same thing. Everything Sam had built was slowly falling apart, and it wasn't my fault anymore. It was his. All of it was his doing. He thought he could outsmart everyone, but in the end, it was his lies that would bury him. I wasn't sure when I stopped caring, but somewhere along the way I had. I wasn't angry anymore. I was just detached. Sam had made his choices, and now the consequences were catching up to him. And I was finally in control of my own life, no longer tethered to him, to the lies, the destruction he'd caused. It was a Thursday when I got the call. "Alex." Sam's voice came through the phone, raspy, desperate. "I need your help." I leaned back in my chair, staring out the window. "You need my help?" I asked, a dry laugh escaping my lips. "That's rich, coming from you. Listen, I'm not asking for a handout. Things have gone south. Investors are pulling out, and people are starting to turn on me." Sam's voice cracked. "I know I screwed up, but I need you to step in, to fix this." It was almost pathetic. Hearing him, knowing how much he had hurt me, asking for help. He didn't deserve my pity. He had used me, betrayed me, and now he wanted me to pick up the pieces. "Not your savior, Sam," I said, my voice colder than I intended. "You dug this hole, now you get to lie in it." "I didn't mean for it to go this far," he pleaded. "You know how much I've done for this company? You know how much I sacrificed. You sacrificed everything, including your brother," I shot back. "That was the price of your success." I paused, letting that sink in, feeling the weight of the truth. "And now you're alone. You're getting exactly what you deserve." There was silence on the other end of the line, which I could hear his breathing, shallow and shaky. It felt like the first time he realized the magnitude of what he'd done. "Please, Alex," he whispered, "don't leave me like this." The desperation in his voice should have made me feel something, maybe guilt, maybe sympathy. But I didn't. I couldn't. He had made his bed, and I was done being part of his lies. "Good luck," I said, hanging up before he could say another word. I sat there for a long time, letting the silence fill the room. I wasn't sure what I expected, but I'd gotten what I wanted, closure. I didn't need his apology. I didn't need his approval. I had my own life now, my own future to build. And that was worth more than anything he could offer. A week later, I heard the news. Sam's company was officially going under. Investors were pulling their funds. His key partners were jumping ship, and his reputation was in tatters. The fall was swift, and the damage was irreversible. I didn't feel anything about it. Not relief, not triumph, just a quiet satisfaction. I was no longer a part of his world, no longer tangled in his mess. I had walked away, built something better, and now he was paying the price for his choices. I ran into Emma later that week. She could tell something had changed in me. The tension, the anger, it was gone. "You okay?" she asked, her voice soft. "Yeah," I said. a genuine smile creeping onto my face. I'm fine. More than fine, actually. She raised an eyebrow, but I could see the curiosity in her eyes. You seem different. Lighter. I am, I said, shrugging. I'm finally free. I didn't need to say more. Emma understood. She'd been there for me when I needed someone the most, and now she saw the result of everything I'd been through. I wasn't broken anymore. I was whole, and I was in control. For the first time in a long while, I felt peace. The phone rang late one night. I had been expecting it, in a way, but I still wasn't prepared for what it would mean. The caller ID flashed. Sam. I hesitated for a moment before picking up. I had told myself I was done with him. Done with the lies, the manipulation, the betrayal. But part of me, some small, lingering part, still felt a pull. It was that old connection, the thread that had once bound us together. Alex, Sam's voice came through, shaky, weak. I need you. My heart skipped, but not out of sympathy. No, it was guilt. That bitter, familiar feeling I couldn't shake. You need me? I asked, my voice flat. You've never needed me before. Why start now? I'm sorry, he said, almost pleading. I know I've ruined everything, but I can't fix this alone, please. I ran a hand through my hair, pacing the room. I knew what was happening. He was losing everything. The investors had pulled out. His reputation was destroyed. Now he was begging for help. I'm not your savior, Sam, I said, the words tasting bitter on my tongue. You made your choices. You put yourself in this position? Alex, please. His voice cracked. I can't do this. I'm losing everything I built, everything we worked for. Don't let it all go down like this. I don't know how much more I can take. I gritted my teeth, feeling the anger rising in my chest again. What about everything you took from me? What about what you did to me? The words were sharp, cutting. Where was that same desperation then? You didn't care about what I was losing, did you? He didn't answer right away, and when he finally spoke, there was nothing but shame in his voice. I was wrong. I see that now. I never meant to hurt you. I wanted to laugh. It wasn't funny. He had hurt me in ways he would never understand. But still, it's that old part of Mitha. One that used to trust him, wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt. I don't know if I can forgive you, said my voice low. But I can't fix this for you. I can't save you from the mess you created. You're going to have to face the consequences. There was silence on the other end of the line. I could hear him breathing, the weight of what I had just said sinking in. It was hard, harder than I expected. But it was the right thing to do. I don't expect you to forgive me, he finally said, sounding defeated. I thought maybe you would help me one last time. I can't, I replied, the words firm, final. You've had your chance. You made your bed. Now lie in it. I hung up the phone, my heart heavy, but my mind clear. I sat down, trying to process what had just happened. A part of me still wanted to reach out, to go back to the way things were before when we were a team, when I still believed in him. But I couldn't. That was the old me, the weak, naive version. The new me, the one I had become, was stronger, wiser, and finally free from the chains of guilt and obligation that had once tied me to him. I was done trying to save him. The phone call had given me clarity. I had spent too long thinking about revenge, about what I had lost. But now, I could see it for what it was, a turning point. A moment where I had chosen myself. I wasn't the victim anymore. I had risen above it all. In the weeks that followed, Sam's situation worsened. There was no miracle, no last-minute rescue. He lost everything. The company, the reputation, the people who had once supported him, they were all gone. I didn't feel satisfaction. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt nothing. I had already moved on. I had my own life to live now, one that didn't revolve around him or his mistakes. It was over. And for the first time I felt at peace. Asterisk. I sat in my office, staring out the window. The view was different. Now, clearer, brighter. It wasn't just the skyline that had changed. It was me. My empire was built from the ground up, piece by piece, with nothing but my own hands. No more lies, no more manipulation. Just hard work, vision, and a hell of a lot of resilience. I leaned back in my chair, letting myself take it all in. This was what I'd worked for. This was my moment. I wasn't looking for validation anymore. I didn't need anyone's approval. The company was thriving, my life was on track, and I was finally in control. It was more than I had ever dreamed of. A knock on the door snapped me out of my thoughts. "Come in," said, already knowing who it was. Emma walked in, her smile as steady as always. She'd been there through it all, even when I didn't know if I'd make it through. "Nice view," she said, glancing out the window. "You've really come a long way, haven't you?" I smiled back, but it was a little more than just a smile. It was a recognition of everything I had achieved. "Yeah, I guess I have." She stepped closer, sitting down across from me. "I remember when you didn't know if you could get out of bed in the morning. Now look at you." Her voice softened. "You've built something real." I let out a breath, leaning forward on the desk. "It wasn't just about proving Sam wrong," I said, more to myself than to her. "It was about proving to myself that I could do this. That I didn't need anyone to hold me up." "Maybe you didn't need anyone to hold you up," Emma said. "But you did need people along the way. You've built this, yes, but you didn't do it alone." I thought about that. She was right. There had been people who'd helped me along the way, who had believed in me when I couldn't even believe in myself. People like Emma, who had never asked for anything in return except to see me succeed. "I suppose you're right," I said, looking at her. "But in the end, it was me who had to make the decision. I had to choose to rise." "And rise you did," she said, her smile warm. "And now you're at the top." I nodded slowly, thinking about everything I had been through. The betrayal, the heartbreak, the endless nights of wondering if I was ever going to get back up. It all seemed like another lifetime. I had spent so much time consumed by anger, but now? Now, I saw things clearly. I had found my strength not in revenge, but in my own ability to keep going. "Where's Sam?" Emma asked, breaking my thoughts. I hesitated. It was a question I hadn't really asked myself in a long time. Sam was no longer a part of my world, and to be honest, I had stopped caring. "He's gone," I said, the words coming out without emotion. "Not physically, but he's out of my life. I've moved on." I felt a strange sense of peace at that. I had spent so long focused on him, on what he had done to me, that I hadn't even noticed when I had finally let him go. He was a distant memory now, a shadow that no longer haunted my every thought. I had built something stronger, something real. "I guess you'll never get that apology," Emma said gently. "I don't need it," I replied without hesitation. The only thing I needed was to show myself that I could do this, that I was enough. She studied me for a moment, her eyes thoughtful. "You know, Alex, I don't think Sam ever really understood who you were. He thought he could control you, manipulate you, but you weren't ever that weak." "Not really." I nodded. I think I forgot that for a while. Emma stood up, walking toward the door. "Well, you remember now, and you've built something incredible. I'm proud of you." I watched her leave, the door clicking softly behind her. I sat there for a long moment, taking it all in. My brother, my past, none of it mattered anymore. What mattered was what I had built. What mattered was what I was going to continue to build. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was thriving. I walked to the window, looking out over the city. It wasn't about the view. It wasn't about the money or the success. It was about the fact that I had gotten here on my own. I had found my way back from the darkest place, and now I was standing at the top, fully in control of my life. I had done it, and no one, not Sam, not anyone, could ever take that from me. I hadn't thought about Sam in a while. I had moved on. I had my life, my business, and my future to focus on. But when I got the news, I couldn't say it surprised me. It came through a call from Emma. "Alex, have you heard about Sam?" "Not really," I said, leaning back in my chair. "What's going on?" "I just heard from a few people. His whole thing's falling apart." His company's bankrupt. He's been blacklisted. No one will work with him anymore. I didn't feel anything. No anger, no satisfaction, just silence. For a second, I didn't even know how to react. "Wow," I finally said, my voice flat. "It's done then?" "Yeah, it's all over for him. People are starting to see who he really is." Her voice was quiet, but there was no sympathy in it. I felt no need to say anything more. The pieces of Sam's life were crashing down, just like I knew they would. But still, I wasn't sure what I was supposed to feel. All those years of bitterness, all that anger I'd expected to feel something when this moment came. Maybe some sort of satisfaction. But there was nothing. Nothing but a quiet sense of justice. That's it then?" I said, more to myself than to her. I guess it was inevitable. "I think so," Emma said. "He had to pay for what he did." I hung up shortly after. I didn't need to hear any more. I stood up, walked over to the window, and stared out at the city. For so long I had been consumed by the idea of revenge. The betrayal, the lies, it had all been a game to me, one that I thought I needed to win. But now, as I watched Sam's empire crumble, I realized something. The real victory wasn't in destroying him. It was in how far I had come. I had spent so much time focusing on him, on his wrongs, that I hadn't even noticed how much I'd grown. The business I had built wasn't just about survival. It was about rebuilding, about creating something stronger, something that was entirely mine. And now I didn't need anything from him. I didn't need closure. I didn't need an apology. I had already moved on. And that felt more like justice than anything else. I thought back to the days when I was at my lowest. When I couldn't see the way out. I was drowning in my anger, my bitterness. It had been a long, painful road, but I had made it. I had found a way to move forward, not because of revenge, but because I had to. Because I deserved more than the broken pieces of what Sam had left behind. In the end, it wasn't Sam's downfall that mattered. It was my rise. My ability to look past everything he did, to build something better out of the wreckage. The power I had found wasn't about watching him fall, it was about realizing that I didn't need him to succeed. And now, as I stood here watching the city below, I realized something else. I was free. Free from him, free from the past. I had my future ahead of me. There was nothing left for me to prove. I sat in the chair, the one I had chosen, the one I had earned. It was made of polished wood, simple but sturdy. There was nothing fancy about it, nothing unnecessary. Just like my life now, I leaned back, letting the weight of the moment settle over me. This was it. I had done it. I had built my empire from nothing, from the ashes of my past. And now I was here, alone, but not lonely. It was quiet in the room, just the sound of the city below, the hum of life outside these walls. It felt like everything had led to this moment. The struggle, the pain, the betrayal, it all led here. And somehow, this was exactly where I was meant to be. I smiled, not because of any victory over Sam, but because of what I had created. What I had done for myself. I didn't need anyone else's approval, didn't need anyone to tell me I had made it. I already knew. The door opened softly, and Emma walked in, looking as calm and steady as always. She didn't need to say anything. She just sat across from me, as though this was a place she had always known I would reach. She'd been there from the beginning, through the worst of it, and now. She was here with me in the final moments of my journey. "I didn't think I'd see you sitting here," she said with a quiet smile. "I didn't think I'd be here either," I replied, my voice steady. "But I made it." She studied me for a moment, then nodded. "You've built something real." "I have." I leaned forward, letting the weight of my own words sink in. "It's mine. All of it." Emma smiled, her eyes reflecting a pride that matched my own. "You've earned it. All of it." I glanced out the window, letting the view of the city fill my thoughts. It had been a long road, but I had walked it on my own terms. There had been moments when I had thought I wouldn't make it, when I had doubted myself. But now I knew that all the struggles, all the pain, had led me to this place. This was the reward. Not the company, not the money, but the peace that came with knowing I had done it by myself. I used to think I needed him, I said, my voice low, almost a whisper. I thought Sam was the reason I got anywhere. But now I see it. I didn't need him. I never did. No, you didn't, Emma said gently. You just had to realize it. I nodded slowly, reflecting on everything that had happened. The betrayal, the anger, the way I had used revenge as a crutch. But now I was standing tall, not because I had crushed my brother, but because I had learned to rise without him. I had learned that my power didn't come from what I took, but from what I built. I'm proud of you, Emma said, her voice soft but sincere. You're exactly where you need to be. I didn't need to say anything more. The words felt unnecessary now. I had already said it all to myself, and I had already made my peace. The journey had ended, and there was nothing left to prove. This was the throne I had built, the one I had earned. And I was going to sit here for as long as I wanted because it was mine. For the first time in my life, I felt complete. Not because of what I had, but because of who I had become. I was done with the past, done with the lies and the betrayal. I had built this life from nothing, and no one, not even Sam, could take it from me. I was where I was always meant to be, alone, but stronger than ever.